Hello there. How you doing? Happy New Year. What a year. Wasn't that a crazy one? I hope you're doing all right. Oh, we are here for the first webinar of 2021, something that we're wanting to do a lot more of. And actually, this is a bit of a preview webinar of some of the other stuff that we've got coming up over the next few weeks, months, years, decades. Who knows? Who knows what's going to be happening? But this is a bit of a preview to kickstart the year and just really introduce you to some of the stuff that we're doing to help you to launch your podcast. And we're going to be talking about that in just a sec. Now, I'm going to wait for a few people to come through and just going to give a few shout outs before we dig in. Then I'll introduce myself. I'll give you the format of the session, and we'll dig into what we're going to look at today. So who we got online? Let's have a quick look. We've got, I'm just going to go right from the top here. We've got Kiki. Good to see you from Sweden. Hope you're doing all right. A Captivate user. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. We've got Julia. What a wonderful spelling. From Germany. Good to see you. Happy New Year, Julia. Sam from the Captivate team. And yep, Sam asked me earlier, we're actually together in life and in Korea. And she said to me, do I need to do anything for the sushi later? I said, well, maybe you could order it. I don't know if she's going to order it. That's a little surprise for me after the webinar. Will that sushi be ordered? I don't know, Sam. You pick what you want. Pick what you want. You know what I like. We've got Chris. How are you doing, sir? Happy New Year. Chris is from Sheffield. And you actually launched your podcast with Captivate a while ago, right here in this very studio that I'm recording this. So I hope you're doing well, Chris. Welcome to the webinar. It's good to see you. I really look forward to seeing you in person. We've had to close the studio to the public with that bloody COVID going on right now. But we'll be welcoming you back into the studio, I'm sure, very, very soon when it's safe to do so. So I hope you're doing well, Chris. Good to see you. We've got Toby from the Space Coast of Florida. Hello there, sir. Hope you're doing well. Love Florida, big fan of Florida, big fan of the Space Coast as well. We were down there for, I think, a couple of years ago for the Falcon Heavy launch, the first one. You know, where it came back down and landed on the landing pad in the sea. That was insane. Just watching the thrusters come back down was just mind blowing. We were on the bridge, as you can see, the launch pad. It was just unbelievable, Toby. So welcome. We got Christine. Hope you're doing well. Hoping to launch summer 2021, but still so much work to do from Virginia. Hope you're doing well. We're going to take care of some of that work for you. Don't worry. Don't worry. We got you back on that. Karen, hello there. Long-time friend of Rebel Base Media. Hope you're doing well, Karen, and staying safe. The Steve Meister General, one of our deep dive Q&A veterans. I'm all right saying that. Hope you're doing all right, mate. Up Cardiff, Swansea. Cardiff, Swansea? I want to say Swansea. Swansea, isn't it? Don't kick me in the face for saying Cardiff. Swansea. It is Swansea, isn't it? Hope you're doing all right down there and staying safe. Different rules over here to Wales, I think. Track and Ball Podcast, Happy New Year. Fresh Visuals. Peter Draper, good to see you. Happy New Year. We've got Kerry. Happy New Year. We've got Bill Brunson. Hello there. How are you? A new Captivate user, if I recall. Welcome, Bill. Good to see you. We've got Louis in Toronto. Hello there. Happy New Year. Andre, hello in Puerto Rico. My favorite craft beer podcaster. Hope you're doing well, mate. It's been a while since we've spoken. Hope you're doing very well down there. And Annette, as always, a pleasure. Happy New Year. There's always something new to learn. I don't know about that, but we'll see. Damn, yes. And I kind of got it right. Like I knew it was Swansea in my head, Steve, but I was like, well, you know, I knew it was. The Lavender Tavern. That sounds like a place I want to be. Might help with the old sleeping on a night. Hope you're doing well. Happy New Year to you. Games for Confidence, ready to go. Me too. So what are we going to do today? Well, the plan today is we're actually running another webinar later this month, which is it's going to be a real in-depth sort of guided webinar on how to launch a podcast. That's what we're doing later this month. I'm going to tell you details about that. So today, what I'm going to do is a few different things. Number one, I'm going to preview our brand new Podcast Launch Accelerator course, which is launching on the 21st of January. It is badass. It is the complete bite-sized chunks teaching you how to start from scratch with a podcast, but it's doing it in such a way. Anyone that knows me, anyone that knows Rebel Base Media knows that we educate in a way that not many other people do, if anyone. We cut straight through the jargon, we cut straight through the rubbish, and we teach you things that are going to set your show up for the success in the long term. And that's what this course is all about, bite-sized chunks. Now, we're launching that slightly later. I'm going to show you a preview of it today. What I'm also then going to do is give you and talk to you about the Podcast Launch Accelerator crib sheet. And that's the thing that I'm really going to dig into today. I'm going to walk you through that crib sheet, because if you follow the crib sheet, you will launch your podcast. That is it. It's simple. I've designed it myself along with the course, and I'm gonna actually just tell you when you can get a hold of that. I'm going to tell you how to get a hold of that, and I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised when I tell you when and how you can get a hold of that. So I'm going to talk you through that crib sheet. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 big reasons that people don't launch their podcast. I'm going to talk to you about what those 4 reasons are, and in particular, some things that you can do to get over them, and really just to kind of dig into them in a little bit more depth. Really, this is to reassure you and give you a little bit of a leg up, because there's so many people starting podcasts now. I want you to understand what the pitfalls are and what the big 4 reasons are that you might not launch a podcast, all right? And the things that generally stop people. So, when we see people that have said, I've been thinking about it for like a year, but I've never quite got there, it's always one or a combination of these 4 things that will stop you. All right. These 4 things. That's how it goes. We're going to talk about how to launch a podcast in particular when it comes to a Q&A. So what I want you to do, all right, the wonderful Sam and then the wonderful Tiffany, Tiffany's just joined us here at Rebel Base Media working on the Captivate support portal. Tiffany and Sam, you're going to see an announcement about Tiffany tomorrow, actually, on the blog. But what you're going to see is that Tiffany and Sam are dotted around right here in the chat. So what I want you to do, I'm going to go into a bit of a Q&A. If we've got some questions about how to launch a podcast, get them in at any time. Don't wait until the end. Don't wait until I say questions are open. Just keep asking questions. Keep asking questions about podcasting, about how to launch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to very kind of in-depth go through those questions sort of midway to maybe 3/4 of the way through this webinar. We're going to get to that, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to get that crib sheet. Sam's compiling these questions for me, as is Tiffany. So start asking your questions right now. And as I'm talking, if anything comes up, let me know, all right? So we've got Captain Speak from Orlando, and we've got Ashley from Baltimore. Hope you're doing well, both of you. Happy New Year. So. Let's talk about podcasting. All right. Launching a podcast and growing a podcast are 2 very different things. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to split up our efforts when it comes to helping podcasters into those 2 tranches. How do you help someone that wants to launch a podcast, and how do you help someone that wants to grow a podcast? There are 2 very different skill sets and 2 very different needs required when it comes to that, all right? So if you're starting a podcast, you've got different needs to someone that's 100 episodes in and wants to break a plateau or start to monetize or whatever. Very different needs, all right? So what we've done is we've basically approached this as, look, this is how to launch a podcast. Here's this free Podcast Launch Accelerator. Here's this amazing crib sheet. And then we've got other stuff to help you to grow. So this is really specifically about how to launch a podcast. All right. Now, who am I? You might not know me. Some of you do. Some of you might not know me. I'm Mark. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media. You'll see that at the top of the screen. Pointed in the right direction. That's the first. So I run Rebel Base Media. We are a podcast tech company, all right? And what we do is we make products and services that help podcasters. We started life back in 2014, working alongside John Lee Dumas from EO Fire as one of our partners with podcast websites. We brought the world's first and the world's biggest and the world's only dedicated WordPress service for podcasters to market. It's brilliant. We still use it to this day. We've still got people using it. It's still one of our favorite products. And we've been in podcasting since 2013, since when we did that. And what we've essentially done is we've expanded out what we offer to podcasters, all right? So now we run podcastsuccessacademy.com, which is an educational membership, which we're just revamping literally this week. And the big thing that people know us for is Captivate.fm, which is our podcast hosting, analytics, marketing, and promotion platform that basically lets you start a podcast, distribute that podcast to Spotify and to Apple and to Amazon, get the analytics and grow that podcast. All right. So we're in podcasting every single day. It's what we do. All right. And I personally, I'm a big podcasting geek. I started podcasting and getting into podcast tech because I started podcasting about Batman and DC Comics and Star Wars, and then got into building podcast tech because I loved podcasting so much. So I'm a real passion podcaster. I came at it from a passionate angle. And I'm still like that to this day. Some of the features that we release, frankly, we build them because I think, wouldn't it be nice if I could just do this with Captivate? I've even got a Star Wars watch band on. Thanks, Sam. And so we are like you, all right? I've produced over 1,300 podcast episodes, all right? Over 1,300 podcast episodes, from solo shows to seasonal shows to interview shows to narrative shows. I've done them all, and I still do them all to this day. I still produce 2 and 3 podcast episodes every single week, and I haven't stopped since 2013, all right? So that's me. I live and breathe podcasting and working with Captivate podcasters and podcast websites podcasters. I see so many people struggling with the same thing. So that's what we're going to demystify today. All right. So I'm going to give you a warning. I don't really educate like most people do. I'm not going to give you any slides today. We'll do that on the next webinar. We're going to do that when we talk through on the 21st. Today, I'm not going to give you any slides because it's the first webinar of the year. Burning questions are afoot. You come back after Christmas and you want to get this thing done. Listening to me waffle on with some pre-prepared slides is not going to help you today. So I'm going to talk to you about this crib sheet. I'm going to give you the crib sheet. You can just have it. And then we're going to go into a Q&A, all right? So don't expect any weird slides or anything like that. We're going to get to those on the next session. We've got some fantastic ones that Rachel has done here at Captivate that we're going to dig into on the next session that will really help you with that launch. But today, I'm going to give you the crib sheet, all right? That's the plan today, because then you can take the crib sheet and you can get on with it. You can get building and launching your podcast. All right. So let's get on with it. Okay. So we've got some questions coming in. This is fantastic. This is funny. Julia, I have questions about hosting for podcasting. Buzzsprout, Spreaker, which one is best? Captivate, of course. Come along, Captivate.fm. It's allowing you to host multiple podcasts on one account, unlike any of those. It's got world-class support. We work directly with Apple, Spotify, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So try Captivate.fm, all right? That's the one that you should be using. It's the easiest way to start a podcast, Captivate.fm. Go and check it out. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. Super stuff. So Sam's going to be putting together some quick Q&As for me. Just go ahead and keep asking those questions. So let's dig in. For Europe as well. Yes, Julia, I'm in England. All right? And we work with European Union countries. We work with British companies. We work with podcasters all over the world, Julia. So yes, US, UK, Europe. You'll even get to pay in euros or GBP if you want. We're very Eurocentric. Okay. Let's have a go with some of these 4 things then. So there are 4 things that really stop podcasters from launching. And the reason that I'm telling you this today is that, number 1, I want you to call them out. You know, when you're a kid, you get a little scared of the dark. You know, you're a little bit worried about, you've seen that movie and it's a little bit, oh, there's a monster under the bed. But when you shine the light on it, there's nothing there that you need to be scared of. And these 3 things, these 4 things even, that most podcasters struggle with, what I want to do here, all right, for the next few minutes, I want to shine a light on these issues and let you know that you're not alone in them, all right, and let you know how we can overcome them together, all right, and then I'm going to talk to you about the crib sheet because it helps you to overcome it, all right. So let's dig into these things. There are actually 4 stoppers when it comes to launching a podcast. There's the fear of failure. There's the content confusion curse. There's technology turmoil. I've written these. And there's the overwhelming time trap. All right. Let me just reiterate those ones. 4 things that stop you launching a podcast. And you either suffer from one of them or multiple. All right. There's the fear of failure. There's the content confusion curse. There's the technology turmoil. And there's the overwhelming time trap. All right. Just one of those 4 things can stop you in your tracks. All right. And there might be more of them that you're suffering with. Let's talk about what each one of those is and how we can overcome it, all right? And let me know if I'm talking, let me know in the chat, in the comments. I can see the comments fairly live. Let me know if it sounds familiar, all right? If any one or of a number of these things sound familiar. Okay, so let's dig in. Number 1, the first of the 4 problems that may well stop you from launching your podcast, the fear of failure focus, where you focus not on the creativity, not on the fun, not on the accessibility or the really kind of interesting stuff that you can do in podcasting, the doors that it will open. No. You focus on the stuff that's a little bit scary. And I've done this, all right? I do it all the time when it comes to creating something new. The fear of failure focus usually manifests itself in one or more ways. Number 1, imposter syndrome. Why should I talk about this thing? Who's going to listen to me? I'm not an expert. That's imposter syndrome. Number 2, the fear of failure or no one listening. Well, what if no one tunes in? I'll feel a little bit embarrassed. I'll feel a little bit shy. Am I going to really want to carry on podcasting? I understand that. Number 3, exposing yourself, kind of letting the wall down a little bit. And this is a really hard thing. Letting the wall down, letting people in, being yourself, not being that robotic kind of voice that I was on my first episode, my first 50 episodes. Really letting people in, all right? That fear of that, or that fear of not knowing what that first step is. There's so much advice out there, so many $97 courses, so many YouTube channels, so many people professing to teach you podcasting that you can have all of this information and you just don't know where to start, all right? There needs to be an order. So that fear of failure focus, that imposter syndrome, maybe it's that fear of opening up. Maybe it's that fear of no one tuning in. Maybe it's that fear of just, actually, where do I start? That fear of failure focus can stop you today. It can literally make you send this microphone back to Amazon and just stop you from getting started. But we don't need to worry about that. And do you know what? The reason for this and the takeaway that I want you to take away from this fear of failure focus is simple. The fear of failure is just like any fear. It's never as big and it's never as bad as you expect it to be when you look at it and you really start to dissect it. All right. Now, let me give you an example of this. You can be afraid to launch because of imposter syndrome. I understand that. I run a technology company. There is no one that has suffered with imposter syndrome more than me because I'm competing with really smart people. Okay. Other CEOs, other tech founders, they're all really bloody smart. Okay. But the thing is, the second that you decide to buy a microphone or to buy a camera or to buy a roadcaster or to buy a Zoom P4 like that one behind me, whatever it is, the second that you decide to do that, you have had the confidence to explore podcasting. And because you've explored podcasting and because you've taken that first step, guess what? You know deep down that you already know enough to carry that podcast because otherwise you wouldn't have got that far. The fact that you're here today, the fact that you've Googled how to podcast, the fact that you've even considered it means that you already know deep down that you're good enough to do this because otherwise you wouldn't even be considering it. You only begin to consider something, in my opinion, when you've decided that you want to give it a go. And then it's just about putting the pieces together. Okay. So I want you to really be clear on this, that you don't need to be afraid of no one listening. You don't need to be afraid of imposter syndrome because you've already decided. You're already good at what you do because you've decided to look into podcasting. Okay. You don't have to be afraid of that. One of the things that I found when I came into podcasting was that it's the most collaborative space that I've ever been in. All right. People want you to succeed. So don't be afraid of that. Okay. Don't worry about that. Fear, you do not need to be afraid of because we are here to help. Other people are around to help. All right. We got this. So don't let the fear of failure focus stop you. The second thing, this is a big one. The big thing that stops people, one of the huge things that I get asked all the time is what I call the content confusion curse. I like my alliteration. Content confusion curse. That sounds cute, Mark. I understand. But what the heck does it mean? Let me tell you. What do we talk about? What do we talk about? All right. Now, there are two types of podcasting, in my opinion. All right. There's the educational podcasting, the entrepreneur podcasting, the interview shows, the learn something, the teach me something podcasts. And then there's the entertainment shows that exist purely for entertainment, the Joe Rogans of the world, the Law of the world, some of the Kevin Smith podcasts out there, Why Are Dads, which is from Alex Steed, which is just a fantastic podcast. These are about entertaining, all right? And sure, there's a little Venn diagram bit of overlap, which I'll get to in a sec. There's a little bit of Venn diagram overlap where you can be entertaining, you can be educating. All right. But what tends to happen is that people come into podcasting expecting to talk about things that are different to what they ordinarily talk about. So let me give you an example in both kind of areas here. I run a tech company. All right. Every single day I'm talking about tech. I'm talking about how to build a tech company. I'm business planning, I'm cash flow planning, I'm feature planning, I'm product planning, I'm testing product. I'm working with the marketing team on what we're putting out. I'm working with the branding team on what we're putting out. And I talk about this stuff every day. But if I was to start a podcast, what would happen is I'll pop this microphone in front of me and I'd think, all right, I want to educate people on software companies and how to build a business or entrepreneurship, but I don't know what to talk about. Of course I do. And of course you do. But what we do is we make out that we've got to package this up in a different way. We make out that we've got to make it some big grandiose thing that we can't just be ourselves with. So what we do is we look for cute little angles. We look for cute little things that we think sound sexy, but actually just become confusing to the listener. We don't do what it says on the tin. We don't deliver something that is just very clearly this thing. And if we go into the entertainment realm, I love Star Wars. As you can tell, I run a company called Rebel Base Media. I have a Star Wars watch strap, Rebellion for the win. And what I do is I talk about Star Wars. You know, what's the future for Luke Skywalker? What's going on with Grogu? Who knows? And I talk about things day to day. But I'm scared when it comes to podcasting of putting that out there because I'm a little embarrassed. So I don't know what to talk about. And what I tend to do, and I see this so often, I had this the other day, someone emailed me about it. What I tend to do is, again, I will try and make it sound like it appeals to everyone. To everyone, because I'm afraid of niching down. And that's the key takeaway. If you don't know what you want to talk about, if you are suffering from the content confusion curse, I want you to do this. I want you to understand that out there somewhere are 1,000 people that love the very same thing that you love and talk about it in the same way that you do, and either have the same opinions on it or would love to discuss why their opinions are different on it. And those people, if you were at a bar, if you were, imagine that being at a bar, thanks lockdown. If you were at a bar, at an event, you'd naturally gravitate to a few of those people and you'd have a deep dive conversation. You would. And you wouldn't feel silly about it. You wouldn't feel sad about it. You wouldn't feel worried about it. You would just do it because it's natural. And the thing that you should talk about on your podcast is just that. It's the thing that feels most natural to you, the thing that you could talk about forever without getting bored, the thing that you are so passionate about that people, when you've been out to an event or to a bar and someone that knows you comes up and they find you talking about this thing, that they say, oh, he's not on about that again, is he? He'll talk your ear off with that. That's the thing to talk about. That's the thing to podcast about. And we can wrap it up in segments. We can wrap it up in a podcasting format. But that's the thing that you should talk about. So this content confusion curse, again, you already know what to talk about because you do it every single day, all right? And so many of these podcast gurus try and wrap this up and make it sound over complex because then they can sell you their $897 course. You don't need to do that because you're already podcasting. Every time you talk to someone about something that you love, you're podcasting. You just haven't hit record yet. The third thing that I want to talk to you about, one of these top 4 stoppers, is the technology turmoil. Oh my word. Oh my word, the technology turmoil. What mic do I need? What mixer do I need? What laptop do I need? What is podcast hosting? Julie, you mentioned, what podcast hosting do I use? Captivate. And it's difficult because there can be so many different pieces. Well, the thing I want you to understand is this. There doesn't have to be different pieces. There doesn't have to be many moving parts. There can be 2. Something to record into and some way of distributing. Okay? Something to record into, some way of distributing. Now that could be as easy as this. A Zoom H6 and I can talk into it. It's not ideal, but it's better than not podcasting. It's got microphones on it. I can get my audio from there, and then I can publish it to somewhere that will distribute my podcast, like Captivate.fm, the hosting platform that generates all the stuff you need to get your podcast into Apple. So it can be that simple. You take something that will allow you to record, and you record into it. Okay, that's it. Now, that's a little bit flippant. That's a little bit kind of overly simplified. But the point that I'm trying to illustrate is that you don't need to worry about technology. All you need to do is decide on technology. All right. So things like this, the Rode Pod mic. All right. Things like this, the Samsung Q2U or the ATR 2100X. They're all things that just plug into your computer. They just plug into your computer and you can record and you can publish. All right. Now, there's a great question that's come in about editing, which we'll get to in a second. So this is the thing that you need to understand, is that technology can be complex, but it doesn't need to be complex. It can be very, very simple. All you need is the tool to decide. You don't need this big menu of technology. You just need, okay, if you want to use a mixer and a microphone, use the Rode Pod mic and a Zoom P4. If you want to plug straight into your computer and record into some software, fine, use an ATR 2100X. All right. You just need to decide. There is no getting technology wrong. Okay. There is no getting technology wrong. It's just the technology that you need right now. And sure, you can scale. You know, we've got a Heil here. We've got a Rode Procaster that a Rodecaster Pro that I'm recording into. It's all stuff that you can progress to. All right. Now, in the crib sheet that I'm going to share with you later, there's a checklist. You just have to decide. All right. So I'm going to give you that later. The fourth thing that stops people from launching the podcast is what I call the overwhelming time trap. I like that one. The overwhelming time trap. Christine, yes, it is. Yeti, MacBook, GarageBand, that's all you need. The overwhelming time trap is, this is a double-edged sword, this one. This is a bit of a pain. I don't have enough time to do everything. And the other side of the coin, I'm overwhelmed. So I'm overwhelmed. I can't find the time. So I just blow up and stop. All right. And it happens a lot. It really happens a lot, because Guru is telling you this, how to get into New and Noteworthy, how to do this, why you need a VA, why you need to outsource this, why you've got to write 42,000 word show notes. Then you've got work, and then you've got family, and then bloody COVID. Everything's going on, lockdown. I can't find the time to do this. So what you've got to do is you've got to think, actually, how can I prioritize this? The overwhelming time trap is only overwhelming if you let it be overwhelming. Remember, everything can be digested if you break it down. All right? Everything can be digested if you break it down. You just do one thing at a time. And again, the crib sheet I'm going to give you in a bit will cover this, but think it through. What's the most important piece of the puzzle when it comes to launching a podcast? It's launching the podcast. It's getting some audio out. Doesn't have to be the best audio in the world. Doesn't have to be the final format. Doesn't have to be edited. Controversial. Doesn't have to have the best cover art. Just got to have some cover art. Because remember, nothing's ever done. Nothing is ever finished. Nothing is ever complete. We're always iterating. And guess what? You know, the second we get a new listener and that listener emails and said, hey, Marco, do you know what would be cool? If you just turned your music down a little bit in the intro. That's happened to me. Annette will tell you. Podcast Accelerator was loud music to start with. Turn that down. So you're never finished. So why bother when you launch? Why bother thinking that you have to finish? All we have to do is get to the start. All right. And that's why the overwhelming time trap doesn't have to stymie us. It doesn't have to cause us problems. It can really just be as simple as step 1, step 2, step 3. And remember, at the end of step 1, we just need to have got something out. There was a comment earlier about editing, which we'll get to. Do you need to edit? Who says? Who says you need to edit? It's just because it's a done thing. Sure, it's not ideal if you don't edit, but I would rather you launched and didn't edit than tried to edit and didn't launch, because you can add that later. You get better and better and better and better. Think of it as a sport. You don't play soccer and expect to be David Beckham. You play soccer and expect to get a little fitter and a little better every time you play. It's like fitness. It's like running. It's like writing a book. You start, you edit, you start, you edit, you start, you edit. Okay. So those 4 things stop people from launching. Okay. Let's just recap those. The fear of failure focus, the content confusion curse, technology turmoil, and the overwhelming time trap. Now, these are all things that stop podcasters like you launching. Okay. So this crib sheet that I'm going to give you, it gets you around them. And in some cases, it gets you through them. Okay. So we're going to break them down. I'm going to talk to you about the crib sheet in just a second. Okay. But let me know if there are any questions. I'm about 10 seconds behind the chat on this one. So I will see questions coming. I'm going to get a drink. Let me know if you've got any questions on that. We will really go into some depth on them, if you like. I'm going to then preview the Academy course. This is not a sales thing. It's a free course that's coming out on the 21st. I'm going to give you the crib sheet later. It's all free. None of this is paid stuff. So it's not like a stay till the end for a discount. None of that. All right. You can have it for free. I'm going to get a drink. Let me know if there are any questions. We'll go through some comments. We'll just we'll pick up the conversation a little bit. Then we're going to dig into a couple of things. Number 1, I'll give you a preview of the course. Number 2, I'm going to talk to you about the crib sheet and dig into that. And then I'm going to tell you when you can get it and how you can get it. All right. But this is brilliant. I'm enjoying this. Thanks for letting me talk at you. Let me know if you've got any questions while I get this drink. Oh dear. Do you know what these are? Aren't they so loud, these? Aren't they loud? All right, let's go through some comments. Kipper. Thank you very much for my DC minifigures, dude. I got a package through the mail, all right, just before Christmas, and it was a package from Kipper that had all these DC Comics Lego minifigures in. Dude, it's badass. We got like Wonder Woman, Flash, we got Batman in there. Just thank you, man. Honestly, really appreciate it. One from Bill. Starting has been a lifetime challenge for me because of my perfectionism, but I'm getting over it. Exactly. Perfectionism is unattainable, and I'm the same as you, Bill. I really am. But remember, something can be perfect in the moment, but the definition of perfection changes over time. And here's the deal. The better you get at something, the higher your standards of perfection become, because you know what you can refine. So today, you could launch the perfect podcast, but in 6 months' time, that ain't going to be perfect. And I've been there and I've done it and I continue to do it. All right. So don't let perfectionism do that. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about that with the crib sheet in a bit. Brilliant. Really great point. Fresh visuals. Does Captivate have the magic mastering thing that Buzzsprout has? Actually, we're putting something together and launching something that will normalize everything and will essentially do that for you. So actually, Buzzsprout uses an external service called Orphonic, which we work with as well. They just kind of wrapped it in something called magic mastering. They've kind of branded it and labeled it. But I'm fairly sure it runs through the Orphonic service. So Captivate is launching something in that space as well. I don't think it's necessary, if I'm honest with you. I think it's more of a nice to have, but give Captivate a whirl, give it a kick the tires a little bit. I think you'll quite enjoy it. What else we got? Ashley's got a great question, which we'll get to in a little while. Some very kind comments. Thank you to Eric for this comment. Thank you so much for that one. It really means a lot. Thank you to Annette and so on and so forth for some of the kind words. Thank you very much. So let's get to this Podcast Launch Accelerator course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a launch, kind of an overview look at what this course will cover. It's free. Like I said, this is not a sales thing. And then I'm going to talk you through the crib sheet, because the crib sheet today, you could use it to launch your podcast. All right, today. So I'm going to talk you very quickly through the course and just give you a bit of a look at that one. And then I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Where are we on that one? There we go. So let me share my screen with you, people. There we go. Can you see it? Yes, you can. Can you fix it? Yes, you can. So this is the Podcast Launch Accelerator. All right. So this is something that we're going to be putting out, like I said, on the 21st of January. This will be launching. And the kicker with this one is that it's not a launch course like everyone else does it. Look here. This is a launch your podcast, attract your first 100 listeners, and cover your costs in just 28 days. All right. Launch your podcast, attract your first 100 listeners, and cover your costs in just 28 days. Now, this is all about simple, bite-sized chunks of information. Every video is tiny. It's to the point, it's succinct, it's clear, and it's actionable. All right. We've broken it down into 4 phases, and it looks like a lot, but the videos are so short that it's very clearly, okay, you're at this point, do this thing. And then that gets us to the next stage. Okay. So these 4 sections that we've got down here, we've got the introduction, we've got designing your podcast as phase 1. And we go into some serious depth, designing your podcast, finding the perfect idea, designing your avatar and your XYZ statement and explaining what that is, right through to choosing the right podcast categories, your podcast flow, defining your calls to action, where to get your intro music, your outro music from. All of this is there, even how to create a content calendar. But these are all short, actionable tidbits. It's not a big, long course, but it's clear and comprehensive, and it gives you everything you need for success. It's not just launch, it's launch, find your first 100 listeners, and actually start to cover your hosting costs, all right, in 28 days. It's that clear. We've got phase 2, which is understanding podcast technology, which is basically how to pick the right microphone. What other optional tech do you need? And this is what I'm talking about with that technology turmoil. Most podcast tech is optional, all right? Most podcast tech is optional. We're going to talk about how to edit your podcast, understanding what an MP3 file really is, how to set up your podcast hosting, how to actually build your calls to action into your emails, okay? There's everything in there. How to book podcast interview guests if that's what you so wish to do. Very, very simple, very powerful stuff. And that trend continues right through because we've got this phase 3, which is building your podcast, how to put it all together. And phase 4, which is then launching your podcast, okay? How to launch it. And we break that into 2 phases, the pre-launch and the post-launch. What to do to get PR, what to do to get exposure. Okay, it's not like every other person's podcasting course. It's done by us, and we work with thousands of podcasters every day, and it bugs me. That's why we created this. It bugs me that people are having to pay for content that's rubbish, all right? This is free. Just have it, okay? Coming out 21st of January. So that's the Podcast Launch Accelerator. It's pretty sweet. It's going to work really well. Quick question, Julia, can you launch a podcast from Captivate to YouTube as well? Yes, actually, we've been talking about that today. That's done, and that will be launching very, very shortly. So yes, you can manage that all in one place. That's the Podcast Launch Accelerator. It's a free course. It's going to be at podcastsuccessacademy.com. It's not live yet. You can sign up in readiness for that. And what will happen is you'll go to a dashboard and you'll see the fact that we're launching that and we're rebuilding that one. And if you click in the courses section or click on the launch your podcast section, what will happen is you'll see a banner saying launching 21st of January. Okay. But what I want to do now is talk to you about this crib sheet. Now, the little kind of, not a surprise, but the little bonus that I want to give you because you registered for this webinar, and the bonus that I want to give you because you turned up and you're letting me kind of rant at you and kind of talk to you about podcast launching. And this is a preview, okay, of this course. I'm going to give you the crib sheet. I'm going to give you the run through, and then I'm going to send it by email to everyone that signed up for this webinar. So right after this session, in your inbox, you will have the podcast launch crib sheet that I'm about to show you. And you can use it to launch your podcast. Like today, you can start using it. So everyone is going to get this the second that we finish this webinar. All right. So let me talk to you about it. Let me show you it. Let me run you through it. All right. Because it really is pretty cool. It really is pretty cool. Where are we? Okay, here we go. Let me do a little screen share. Okay, here we go. There we have it, the Podcast Launch Accelerator crib sheet. And it really is pretty badass, honestly. I know I'm kind of a little bit biased, but it really is. It really is fantastic, and it's free, like I said. Let me run you through it, all right? Because you're going to be amazed at how much we've given you with this one, all right? First of all, it looks cute, but look, we break it down into different phases. We talk to you about how to use it, and there's a picture of me with a leather jacket on, looking all contrasty and cute. You know, I don't know, might delete later, whatever. But we really get to it. Okay, so first and foremost, the thing that people struggle is they don't put a launch date on anything. They say, well, I want to launch a podcast. The first thing that we do before we even get into the education is we ask you, get a big bold Sharpie and write down, I will launch my podcast on this date. This date in big, bold letters, all right? That's the first thing that we get to, because you need a deadline. Parkinson's law dictates that any task will expand such to fill the time that you've allocated to it. So if you give yourself a long deadline, it will take you a long time to launch. Give yourself a short deadline, you will get it done. All right. I know you will get it done. So that's the first thing we do. We'll give you a place to write a big, bold launch date. But then we really get into it. Your podcast ideas. Remember what I talked about earlier, the content confusion curse. What do I even talk about? Well, let's break it down. Is your podcast a hobby? Is it for your business? Is it for your employer? Are you doing it as an internal podcast for your employer? Let's break it down. I mean, you see this Venn diagram underneath. We've got 3 points to this. You've got the things that you love talking about, the things down here at the bottom right with low podcast competition, things that people aren't talking about. And we've got things that your audience might like. Okay. And right in the middle is where you basically find your podcast idea. So I might like talking about Star Wars, and I love talking about Star Wars. I might also like talking about DC Comics, but I find that the things with low podcast competition are people talking about retro Star Wars or retro DC Comics. Okay, so I might love talking about Star Wars and DC, but everything else is really high competition apart from retro stuff, which has got low competition down at the bottom right. And then the things that my audience likes might be reviews, toy reviews, book reviews, comics reviews. And in the middle here, I might land on, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm going to talk about retro Star Wars comic reviews. And that is my podcast. That's my niche. And it sits right here in the center because it's what I love talking about. It encompasses a podcast with low competition and things that my audience likes. And we'll discuss in the course how you find low competition. Okay, so we'll discuss that in the course. Podcast idea generation, step 1. And then what we do is we design the podcast. All right, so what we do is we step through what we're doing. How do we design the podcast? I'm creating a podcast to either build my network, sell my own things to the audience, or sell sponsorship or listener support. And my show is going to be a solo podcast, an interview podcast, or co-hosted. And my avatar is this. And we talk about listener avatars in the course. Don't worry, we'll dig into that one in the course. But a listener avatar is just your ideal listener. What does that person look like? And then we step through and we look at things that other podcast teachers aren't teaching you, okay? So I will serve my avatar with the following XYZ statement. And again, we talk about this in the course, but the XYZ statement is I will do X for Y so that Z can happen. I will do X for Y so that Z can happen. The XYZ statement for my retro Star Wars comic book review podcast may be as follows. I will produce a retro Star Wars comic book review podcast so that people over 40 years old like me can dig into that podcast and relive their youth with me every single week. I will do X for Y so that Z can happen. Okay, and other people aren't teaching this in podcasting, okay? My show name is this. My tagline is this, and we'll talk about those in the course. And I'll publish at this time on these days per week. So we give you the full planner. All right, it's all here. Notables, things that people aren't teaching you again. What is a podcast notable? A podcast notable is the thing that you will be remembered for, like a tagline. May the force be with you. My tagline from my podcast, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel. People know me for that. The British podcast guy, people know me for that. Okay? That's my notables. What are your notables? What are the bits that people will hook to? Okay. My calls to action. We discuss these, a pre-roll before your content, mid-roll, post-roll. We talk to you about these. What's the call to action and what is the link going to be? As an example of this, the mid-roll might be, hey, here I am on the Star Wars Retro Comic Book Review podcast. Just remember that if you like the podcast, and here's my call to action, if you like the podcast, I would love you to leave a rating and review over on Podchaser. And you can go to sparkofrebellion.com/Podchaser to leave that review. That will help us to get discovered. So that might be my mid-roll. Okay. But we help you with it. We break it down. We give you the format to look through. Okay. So when you're recording your episodes, boom, that's my call to action. Boom, that's my mid-roll. That's my post-roll. All right. You can step through these things. Next up, assets. Where do I get my intro from? And some recommended places. Where do I get my music from? What's the script for my introduction? Because you need a script if you're going to record an intro, okay? Where do I get my outro from? And we step you through this process. Next, the podcast episode flow. Different segments. So in my Star Wars podcast, I might have review of the week. I might have the discussion section. I might have the random spotlight. I might have the listener spotlight. And these are all different segments like radio and TV. They've all got these amazing segments, okay? Podcast cover art. We give you the specifications. We tell you some places and some options for getting it done. You either do it yourself on Canva, you do it cheaply through Fiverr, or you spend a little bit more money at 99 Designs. We're not overwhelming you with options. It's just free, cheap, a little bit more expensive. Boom, boom, boom. That's it. Because we just want to decide, all right, to get you to launch. And then here's the brief for the designer. Other podcast covers are like, now guess what? You could take this page that you put together and give it to your designer, and it will serve as a brief for your designer. They can just use this and design you some art around it. Honestly, so simple. Your podcast description, your podcast categories. We go through these on the course, but here's what you're going to put in to Apple. Here's what you're going to put into Spotify, okay? Next, we even give you a show notes template, so you don't have to worry. Just copy this format. Just steal the format, all right? There's no point overthinking it. There's no point going crazy with it. Steal this show notes template. Podcast technology. Choose from one of these mics. 2 cheap ones that work with USB, 1 cheap one that works with XLR, and 1 expensive one. That's it. No overwhelm. Those options. Just pick. Okay, and we'll give you some demos, of course, on the course. Any extras that you need, any headphones, and so on and so forth. How are you going to record? How are you going to edit? And again, remember, we talk you through these on the course. But the goal of this entire crib sheet is for you to decide, get through to that next decision. All right. Have you set your podcast hosting account? Of course, we recommend Captivate, and we talk you through that. We show you how to build the podcast out in Captivate. All right, we talk you through that process. It's simple. You'll be in Spotify within minutes from signing up from Captivate. If you do this crib sheet, get on Captivate, you can be in Spotify legitimately within an hour. All right, I've done it myself. Phase 3 is building your podcast. Just copy this trailer format that we've given you. Just take the format. All right, don't worry about it. Just take and copy the format. All right, it works. We know it works because we've been doing it for years, and thousands of people have copied this. Hundreds of people have copied this trailer format from us. Just copy the trailer format that we've given you here. Next up, we give you a pre-recording checklist. So if you're a new podcaster, every time you record, just go through this checklist and tick things off. Check all your cables. Check your mic levels. Are your headphones on and working? Have you shut your doors and your windows because someone's cutting the bloody lawn? That happens a lot. And so on. All right. So go through this checklist. And the same with pre-recording checklists for your guests. If you're nervous, if you've got that imposter syndrome, you get your first guest, ask them, have you got the right microphone? Are your headphones on and working? Are your tablet and your cell phones and your computer notifications switched off? All right. We just give you it. Just take that format and just use it. All right. Then we teach you how to publish your episodes and your trailer using Captivate. Very simple. And then this is where, in my view, it gets even more just easy to use and fantastic. All right. We do a stage 1 and a stage 2 checklist for your launch. Stage 1 checklist, friends and family, inner circle. We talk about peers. We talk about industry PR contacts. We talk about relevant Facebook groups. We talk about scheduling email follow-ups. We talk about Podchaser. We talk about pre-gathering 3 reviews from friends. Okay, so that we've got some social proof. We talk to you about gathering common podcast interests with other podcasters. Let's list those podcasts out, okay? Let's email the host of those podcasts. This is all the stuff that I did when I launched my first podcast, and it works, okay? Have you posted your pre-launch trailer to the Rebel Base Media Group so that we can help you to promote it? And then stage 2, Have you published the thank you and the acknowledgements episode, which is a really, really good way of helping a little bit of virality into your podcast? Record an acknowledgements episode where you acknowledge everyone that's helped you with your podcast. Tag them on social and they will want to be involved in that sharing, all right? It's inevitable. Have you done all your scheduled shares? Have you done your graphics on Canva? Have you booked a live stream optional for your launch day? Have you submitted to Captivate for a podcaster PR request? We always try and feature as many of our new podcasters as we can. Have you told us that you've launched? Have you created a simple graphic to teach people how to listen to podcasts? Have you committed a time every day this week to tell people that you'll be on social and interacting? All of these things that I don't think anyone else is teaching you. Everyone's teaching you the same old repetitive stuff, all right? Let's break the mold. Let's get you to actually having some listeners, all right? That's the point of this. And you can just take this. And then a list of resources, of course, a pile of resources. Here's where you get your designs from. Here's where you get your music from. Here's where you get your microphones from. Some of these are affiliate links. Of course, we'll make a quid off them. But of course, everything's there. You don't have to worry about trying to source everything online. Just it's there. All right. And then some next steps. Okay. Did you know that most podcasters don't make it to 10 episodes? If you can make it to 11, a little bit spinal tap. But if you can make it to 11, then you'll do better than most. All right. That's the crib sheet. It's exceptionally comprehensive and it is just free. All right. It's free. It comes with the course. The course is launching on the 21st of January. But anyone that's registered is going to get this right now. Okay. So I'm going to send it to you right after the session. I'm going to send it to you. You'll get it in your email. Just use this right now. All right. Very simple, very powerful stuff. Wow, that was a big run through. Like I said, this is more of a preview webinar. It's not as much of a launch kind of educational session as we originally planned because there's that much to go through with the crib sheet. So what we're going to do is in a second, I'm going to go to a podcasting Q&A for the last 10 minutes. But what I'm then going to do is just remind you that on the 21st of January, we do have another webinar coming up. Now, if you've already signed up for this one, we'll let you know about this new one as well. And from there on, every month, we will launch a webinar that is genuinely sort of, okay, let's work through these 4 steps. Let's give you the answers. Let's do a Q&A, all right? We've got access to our open Facebook group, which you'll see in the crib sheet, which you're very welcome to join. That gives you accountability. But this was to get you that crib sheet, all right? And I thank you for letting me do that. So this is brilliant. This is brilliant. Let's look at some of these questions now. I don't know how many we've got. Not too many, which is good. Obviously, it's any more that comes up, just let me know. We are going to wrap it about the top of the hour, so this is really, really good timing. Let's have a quick look. Okay, so the first question is from Toby Evans over there on the Space Coast. Do you recommend having a unique website for your podcast? Well, I think there's 2 parts to that question. I'm going to put this back. So I was just about to knock it over. I think there's actually 2 parts to that question, Toby. Do you need a website and do you need a unique website? Okay. Do you need a website? Yes, you do. Now, Captivate.fm and maybe your own hosting provider, if you're not using Captivate, which we'd love you to do, Captivate.fm does give you a built-in website. It's automatic, it's free, it's included, it looks amazing. Check out sparkofrebellion.com, sparkofrebellion.com, and you'll see one in action. It looks brilliant and it's free. So yes, you should have a website. Should you have a unique website is a different question. Because if you're creating a fresh show, like Spark of Rebellion is a fresh show. It's not related to anything else. Even though we want to turn it into a network later using Captivate's network features, it is a standalone podcast. It's not related to anything we do here at work. It's not related to anything else. It's just the podcast. So that has its own unique website. However, Captivate Insider, which is related to Captivate, the podcast hosting, we talk about podcasting, or my show, the Podcast Accelerator, which is twice a week, less than 10-minute episodes. It's related to my Mark Asquith website. It has a page on the website that Captivate Sync, the WordPress plugin, which Kiki, I think you mentioned, does the WordPress plugin work. I'll come to that in a sec. I use that to publish my episodes to my own website. So the podcast has a website, but it's not just for the podcast. It's linked to a wider website for other things. So yes, it should have a website. Whether it should be unique or not depends on your goal. If it's tied to a wider business or a wider something else, integrate it with that. If it's a standalone project, use Captivate sites and just build a website. It's automatic. So just use that website as a dedicated, unique site. Great question, Toby. Julia, got questions about hosting for podcasting. Yeah, I'm biased. I love Captivate. We've made it so that it'll be the easiest way to launch a podcast. The user interface is the simplest. It's not me saying that. Look at some of the reviews on Trustpilot. Look at some of the people talking in the Facebook groups. Look at what people are saying. It's a very simple interface. It allows you to host multiple podcasts on one account without having to pay per podcast like everyone else or most of the people. It gives you the website built in. It automatically works with Spotify and Amazon Music and JioSaavn and Apple Podcasts. It gives you calls to action in your player, which no one else does. It gives you the ability to create custom playlists, which no one else does, I think, apart from one other company. It does a lot of things like give you a single subscription link, a one-click PDF sponsor kit. It gives you private feeds, private podcasting, so people can be privately listening to your podcast. These are things that, in the case of private podcasting, not many people do. In the case of the single subscription link and the one-click PDF, no one's doing that. All right, we do that. No one else does that. Okay, so try Captivate for that one, Julia. I think you'll like it. Christine, at what point in the process do I activate and join Captivate? Well, it's really, I'd say, sort of the end of phase one. All right. So when you've planned and designed your podcast, so spend a few days planning and designing that, and then get signed up for Captivate, okay? Because then you can be setting your show up. And what we always recommend, and you'll see this in the launch course and the trailer, the launch course and the crib sheet, we recommend you launch with a trailer, publicize the trailer, then come back and publish more episodes, which leads to your other question. I think it was about how many episodes do you need to launch? It used to be that you'd launch with like 5 episodes from day one to get into new and noteworthy. That's less applicable these days. So what we recommend is that you launch with a trailer, you market that trailer to get people subscribed and to get some early reviews in, and then you launch with 3 to 5 episodes. One, yes, if there is some new and noteworthy to be had, fine. But really, it's so that people can binge your podcast. But the reason that we say that to launch with a trailer early, and why getting in with the hosting is to be done fairly early, is so that you can be getting that social proof, so that you can be getting people to press subscribe for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a week before you actually launch all the content, so that when you do launch the content, that content goes straight to them. Okay, that's the point of that, Christine. Kiki, does the WordPress plugin work? Yes. Captivate Sync. It works. It works with linking Captivate to your WordPress site automatically, so that when you publish an episode to your WordPress site, it syncs to Captivate and sends out to Apple and Spotify. Or if you publish to Captivate, it syncs it back to your WordPress site and automatically creates a page for it, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it works really well, that Kiki. I use it myself. We've got thousands of people that use that. So yes, it's really solid. Chris Whitehead, I've used Captivate for over a year and it's been brilliant. Well, thank you. Not a question, but a statement. I appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much. Ashley, what are the fees to start a podcast in the US? Well, it's just really buying the microphone and then your podcast hosting. So if you work with Captivate, you'll get that for as little as $17 a month, which is, that's your running cost, but it allows you to scale. You wouldn't really need to spend any more money on that. It's $17 a month. Jobs are good. And I think that's if you pay annually, and it's $19 a month if you pay monthly. So it's very, very low, actually, very, very low cost to start. And it's like any hobby, you put a little bit into it and you get a lot back. Another one from Ashley. Do you have to pay for advertising? Is there a way to have local businesses as advertising? How do you organize all of that? So that's something that I talk about on my podcast, actually. You can negotiate fixed price sponsorship, and on the growth tier of the academy, so not the launch tier, but the growth tier that we'll be launching shortly, we'll be teaching you all this. We'll be giving you templates. We'll be giving you things and resources to do this. But ultimately, you just go talk to them. You agree a price, they pay you, and you read out something for their business inside the podcast. All right. It's that simple. Sounds a little bit oversimplified, but believe me, I've done it. I've worked with Zero, I've worked with Aweber, I've worked with Ignite Accelerator, I've worked with all sorts of different people on sponsorships, and that you just simply negotiate it like you would any deal, Ashley. Great question. I'm going to look at the ones that we've not picked up. Yeah, Karen, when will the network features with Captivate be available? So they'll be available on the higher tier. So they'll be available on the network tier. So they'll not be available on the $19 or on the $49. They'll be available to network people who are generally people that are making money from podcasting by selling services. So it's like production companies or people with 50 shows that sell hundreds of thousands of dollars of ads every month. That's the kind of thing we're talking about with a network. They'll be available over the next quarter. Pierre's working hard on them, and they'll be available over the next quarter. And I'm sure that I'm sure that other companies do that. Well, I know other companies do that, but obviously ours will have the specific Captivate twist, which will mean that there are some things that we do that no one else does. So this quarter, the next quarter, I think early next quarter for that one, but I might be mistaken. It might actually be around March time. We've got a few streams of development going on for Captivate, so it will certainly be early next quarter, but it might even be this. All right. Christine, does it ever delete your podcast? No. So I think you're referencing another podcast hosting company that gives you a free account. And that's all well and good. But what happens with many free accounts is that if you are not paying for podcast hosting, they are usually making money off you in another way, or they are trying to get you to pay for podcasting by hooking you in and limiting things on the free tier, like deleting your past episodes. All right. We don't offer a free plan, Christine. The reason for that is that we prefer to be straight up front with you and say, look, if it's a hobby, I play golf, I pay to play golf, all right? It means I've got skin in the game, and it means that I want to make the best of it. That's why we don't do a free tier, because we believe that those who start to pay a little bit for their podcasting are the ones that will see it through. And that's proven. All right. We know that. We have the data that shows that in the industry. All right. Daniel J. Lewis has put that data together. So I know what you're referencing there. We don't give a free account that deletes your episodes. It's just not our model. It's not what we believe in. And we would rather have less users that were sustainably actually paying for podcast hosting so that you continue to podcast versus just a pile of free users that don't necessarily do anything. Like our impetus is on getting, frankly, look, we're a business. We want you to grow so that we grow with you. And ultimately the way to do that is to make sure that you have what you need to podcast and so that you've got skin in the game. No one values free. That's a proven. All right. We know that. Fresh visuals. Hi, Peter. Hope you're doing all right. Do podcasts need to be exclusively solo, exclusively guest driven, or can they be mixed up? They can be mixed. In fact, one of the course modules in this Podcast Launch Accelerator talks about the fact that you can mix it up. Of course, so many people are teaching you it's got to be solo or it's got to be guests. It can be a mix. I do a mix. I know so many people that do a mix. You can do a mix. Don't worry about it. Do what's best for you. Okay. Aziza, the poll feature, you're actually referencing Productivity, which is our stealthy little tech startup that brings interaction to podcasting. We ran a tech test with Captivate podcasters. That's not the Captivate player. It's the Productivity player. We are going to be integrating that with Captivate, but it's not available yet. We're in very early alpha with that one, Aziza. So great question. Keep your eyes peeled. We've got some pretty fun stuff going on with Productivity that I think you're going to like. Fresh visuals. Is there a way in Captivate to integrate sponsor material across the entire portfolio of podcasts retroactively? Yes. Have a look at our AMI functionality. So AMIE, excuse me, audio mastering and integration engine. It's something that we're literally in beta testing for right now. So yes, you are going to be able to do that. And again, with a little bit of a Captivate twist. So you're going to be able to do that. One from Adita. How is Wistia, Soapbox Wistia for podcasting? Honestly, never used it, but generally something that's not doing something that it's dedicated to is not good at the thing that it adds on. So what I mean by that is Wistia does websitey stuff, hosty stuff. It doesn't really do podcasting stuff. It's kind of just bolting it on. So it's never going to be as fully featured or as high quality, in my view, as something that's very specifically dedicated to podcast hosting. Give it a whirl by all means. But in my view, you want to work with specialists, not generalists. All right. Pick people that are good at what they do for the thing that you want it to be good at. All right. So you want to host your podcast, work with a podcast host. That's my humble view. And I'd say that for anything. We don't do certain things. We'll not build custom tech because you want someone that builds custom tech. That you stick to things that you're good at. All right. And specificity is key. Work with someone that specifically does the thing that you need. Screen acting success. What's the difference between the podcast brand and network plan? Actually, so we're just defining this. I think what will happen is that top tier podcast brand plan will become the network plan. So I think it'll be the 19 bucks, the 49 bucks, which are both kind of for independents and people, generally. And then if you're on the 99 bucks a month plan, not only do you get all those extra kind of downloads and stuff, but you get access to the network features. I think that's probably what we're going to do. We've not really nailed that down yet, but I think that's what we're going to do. We're trying to keep it simple for you. So it's not like, okay, here's a network plan and here's wait a minute, that's a personal plan, but kind of got some network. We don't want to do any of that stuff. It's just that, and that. And again, it's just about simplicity. So this has been super. Thank you so much for letting me do this. I'm going to bounce in a second. Thank you for this. This has been really good, like I said. Now, I know it's not been a big educational piece. I wanted to get that crib sheet to you. It transpired, we intended on doing like a big educational piece, but it transpired that the crib sheet and the course were just so valuable that I didn't want to dilute their impact for you. So I'm going to send you the crib sheet. If you're registered via email for this Webby, I'm going to send you the crib sheet. There's no sell. I just want you to use the crib sheet. I just want you to use the course when it launches. I'm going to send you some emails about the webinar on the 21st, which will be the Podcast Success Academy, Podcast Launch Accelerator launch webinar. All right. I'm going to talk you through that. It's badass. It is a badass course. And I'm going to launch that with you on the 21st, and we're going to have some fun doing it. And thereafter, every month, we'll do a live podcast launch webinar like this every single month so that you can keep coming, you can keep checking in, and we can talk about this stuff. All right. That's what we're going to do. I thank you again. Happy New Year. Really, 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 really appreciated. The crib sheet's already arrived. Yes, it has. Super Steve. Yeah, I scheduled that for about 3 minutes past. So thank you guys. Happy New Year. Much love. Thanks for letting me do my thing. Thanks for doing your thing. Keep on podcasting. Do check out Captivate.fm if you're in the market for hosting. It's not a sell, but it does exist. So go and check it out. Captivate.fm. Use the crib sheet. Check in with me. I'm going to see you on the 21st where I'll run you through this course. I'm going to get you through just to that launch, from nothing to launch. All right. So until then, Happy New Year.